Generation 10 is official. The new starters are here. Though if you were paying attention, it seems we're about to enter one of Pokemon's biggest eras ever. Though hey, before we get into what was revealed at the Pokemon Presents, I am gifting this Tatsuguri illustration rare. Now to know if you won, if I do reply to your comment with this Jirachi emoji, then well done, this little gift is on its way to you. Now I have to admit, the Pokemon Presents had a lot of info and there was a lot placed in front of us. There's a bit of something for everyone, but there's actually a lot of info that was released here that will show us some very exciting movements, especially for the collector space. And I'll go into that in just a second, though I want to break down kind of the news that was revealed and give my thoughts on what's going to play out from here. So very exciting things have been revealed for Generation 10. The first area I want to talk about is Pokemon Winds and Pokemon Waves. And as you can see there, we have the 3 new starters that were revealed, which obviously have caused a little bit of a shakeup, but you know what? On first impressions, I am liking them a lot. All right, so we got Brout here, the Bean Chicken Pokemon, super cute, super cool, grass starter. A little bit of like a little chicken, I don't know, final evolution, you never know what you're gonna get with these. You've got Pombon, which is like a fire Pomeranian, which obviously that's probably gonna be the most loved starter because everyone loves Pomeranians as well. And then you have Gekwa as well, the water gecko Pokemon. So a lot of cool things here. Generation 10 is looking pretty cool. And I have to admit, from the trailer of what we saw for Pokemon Winds and Pokemon Waves, they took the criticism of graphics for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And you know, any kind of complaints that people had for graphics, they took that pretty seriously. And you can see the underwater world here. It looks pretty cool, man. Like they look like they really put in a lot of effort here. Just from first reveals, it's definitely looking like a massive step up. I think Game Freak and Pokemon have had so much negative criticism for the graphics. You know, they've been bombarded with reviews. They've had such negative reception regarding the graphical kind of capabilities of Pokemon games. And fun little fact, this is actually the longest gap between a generation because Pokemon Winds and Pokemon Waves is coming out in 2027 and the last generation came out in 2022. So this is actually breaking that cycle of that 3-year gap between generations. I really am happy about that because Pokemon games, you know, they have been rushed, man. They've been so rushed, so not enough care has been put into them. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet released in a very choppy state. It did improve for the Nintendo Switch 2 with that kind of graphical performance, but still, there's a massive kind of thing where Pokemon have been just rushing it out to meet demands because Pokemon's huge. Every single generation is placed in because that generation then can follow the merch line, it can follow the TCG, and it does feel like every single game has been really rushed. This is the first one where I'm looking back and thinking, wow, it actually doesn't look rushed. It looks like they're actually putting their time in it, so I'm very excited for that. But you know, I do want to talk about the TCG, and especially around the 30th anniversary. So the promo trailer we saw was definitely cool because it showed a lot of fan favorites. You got the base set Charizard, you got Lugia from Aquapolis, you got the 2 pieces of Darkrai and Cresselia, so forth. And of course, then it had a little bit of a vague thing where it said releasing worldwide simultaneously in 2026. And I always find when there's reveals like this, they just leave so much to interpretation and they can cause a little bit of issues. For example, I'm seeing so much speculation right now because there was no 30th anniversary stamps on the promo trailer, that means that the reprints that will happen, oh, imagine if there's no stamp on the card. I think with the promo trailer, what we can expect, obviously we don't have any news to go from, but if we're just making some predictions, or my predictions anyway. My prediction from what we can see, there's obviously going to be a little bit of a drawback to older cards. There's going to be it's going to be a bit of a novelty that they play on. They're going to obviously release these older cards. Though, in terms of releasing older cards, I think it's also crazy to say that people think they're going to get reprinted and there's not going to be some difference with them, or there's not going to be a stamp as well that's shown. Obviously, this is all speculation at this point. Nothing has been confirmed. We can see from what the trailer, we can kind of imagine what's going to happen. The only thing we can draw from is the 25th anniversary set, which was Celebrations, and they did reprint a lot of classics, but of course, all the reprints, they had the 25th anniversary stamp very clearly placed on the card. If there's any sort of reprints, that would be exactly what would happen for the 30th anniversary. I think it's crazy that even some people would suggest, hey, they're going to reprint the card and it's just going to be there in the pack. It's going to be the like Lugia from Aquapolis is going to get reprinted and there's going to be absolutely no difference. And if you look closely at the trailer, a lot of the cards are shown in a variety of languages. For example, the base set Charizard was in German, the Palkia X was in Spanish. So to me, from my interpretation from this, it's very obvious that the promo was just showcasing the history of the TCG, even though it's likely that reprints of cards or re-editions may may happen for the 30th anniversary, it's almost guaranteed that they will be stamped or be very known that they're reprints for this promo set. That distinction will be made very clearly on these cards if that were to happen. One thing about the 30th anniversary, it has been hyped for years, not months, actual years. So if you are planning on buying this set, or if you're planning to hold any sealed product or buy singles, whatever, I do highly recommend tracking your collection for the long term. And you can do that with the Collector app, who are also the sponsors of today's video. Collector is a portfolio tracking app that lets you monitor the value of your collection over time. You can enter the exact price you paid for a certain card or for a certain sealed product, and it will show you how that product moves in the market over time. But even if pricing isn't something you care about, it's awesome to be able to have an app that lets you just store your collectible info, and you can even group your portfolio separately. For example, here I actually separate my Pokemon sealed collections versus my PSA 10s versus my Dragon Ball sealed collection, and so forth. One cool feature about Collector is that they have a built-in trade analyzer. You can just place in what you're offering to trade versus what you'll be receiving, and it will show you whether it's a fair deal based on the current market values. Now, if you upgrade to Collector Pro, you can just use your phone's camera to scan cards into the app, and this is obviously a massive time saver. So if you're wanting to take your collection more serious, Collector is easily one of the best tools available. You can find the details to download the Collector app in the video's description. A big thanks to Collector for supporting the channel. Now let's jump back into this video. The 30th anniversary is going to be hyped. And like I said, all that kind of hype about and all that talking about these stamped promos and all that. A lot of people are hyped. I do think though, something as well, it might be a big release, but for some reason, I don't think the 30th anniversary is gonna be the biggest release for the year. Now, why I say that is when you look at Celebrations, which came out in 2021, yes, Celebrations was a massive release for 2021. When you really think about it, Evolving Skies was definitely the front runner for the TCG. That was the massive moment for the Pokemon's TCG. I do feel as well for 2026 and the 30th anniversary, we will expect something even bigger than this. And there's just so much up in the air. There's so much left for interpretation. The amount of hype that's been building for Pokemon, the amount of kind of effort that's been placed in. I am very excited to see what's going to happen for Pokemon cards, and especially what's going to happen in the future. From the trailer, from what we can see, to me, it just looks like they're looking through Pokemon's history and they're very excited for what's to come. But like I said, we just don't have enough information. It's actually, in terms of the Pokemon Presents, I actually think the TCG got a very small segment, which is usually the case anyway, but we don't really have that much info. So, when everyone's collecting their Pokemon cards and they go, oh, it's all just a hype period, it's all this. You really have to understand Pokemon as a franchise, and you can see this. They literally have one whole day every year because that's how big Pokemon is. So when you're collecting these cards, you are collecting much more than just Pokemon. You're buying into a massive kind of franchise that has so much history behind it as well. So these collectibles and everything that gets released, it all becomes part of Pokemon's history. And you can even see with the Pokemon Presents how focused they are on history. Even when you look at the Pokemon Red and Blue, the game music collection from the Game Boy, you can see how much they revisit to their past and how much they cherish it. Literally everything, whether it's Pokemon cards or any of the games, they all become part of Pokemon's history. They become a moment in time, and Pokemon's really good at making that moment in time become very long lasting. So if there's a music or if there's anything from Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3, they just know how to capture that feeling and then bring it back into the future and then revisit it in the future as well. I mean, even with Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, I'm seeing online people are considering buying a Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo Switch 2 just to play Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green. That is crazy because it's a 32-bit game from 2004. Just that has enough motivation for people to actually go buy a Nintendo Switch. And it's kind of crazy to see on how powerful Pokemon is and how well they do that. So when you are collecting these trading cards, you are buying a moment in time that definitely can become iconic, especially when they revisit it later on. Now, the next area that's really cool with Pokemon Champions, honestly, the trailers for this looked really awesome. This is coming on Nintendo Switch on April. To be honest, I actually thought Pokemon Champions would release as a surprise drop today. I really expected that because there's just all this hype around it, everything. It's looking really good. This is also going to change a lot, and this could have a massive impact also in a lot of areas of Pokemon. We know Pokemon Go in 2016 spiked the TCG. We know Pokemon TCG Pocket also spiked the TCG in 2024. Pokemon Champions could be massive because it's for mobile and Nintendo Switch. So it could be also a new spike of people all start battling because it is a battle simulator and people all start getting into it. And also it draws more and more people into the franchise. And I am looking very excited for Pokemon Champions. I'll be very excited when it releases. And obviously a battle simulator is very fun. And obviously with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, I actually have decided that I'm going to be playing Pokemon Leaf Green with my daughter. And that's going to be her first Pokemon game. She did play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, and she was loving that as well. But like she was only 4 years old at the time, and she was using all the motion controls. She really enjoyed that. But now that she's a little bit older, I do think Fire Red and Leaf Green are actually really good games to introduce. So if you do have kids, I would totally recommend like playing that with them. I'm gonna start that with her today, and I'm gonna let you guys know how it all goes. I think my daughter is gonna see how actually difficult Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were, and I'm gonna be there for the journey with her. So I'll let you know how that goes. Also here you can see Mega Garchomp Z comes to Pokemon Legends EA Mega Dimension. The only thing, and my only criticism of the Pokemon Presents, was the fact that Legends EA in the Mega Dimension, they had like a 2-minute slot, and I thought, was something new going to get released? And it was just talking about Mega Garchomp Z, which we already knew was coming, so that felt a little bit like wasted space. Just, I don't know, to me it was just like, wow, that's a lot of time to talk about something that we already knew was coming. I actually thought when it revealed, oh, there's going to be another DLC for Pokemon Legends EA, but no, it was kind of just speaking a big kind of chunk talking about something we already knew. Exciting. And the only funny thing I saw when I was looking at the trailer as well, Mega Garchomp Z, to me, it looks kind of identical to Garchomp anyway. It doesn't look that crazy different that I'm like, wow, this is insanely hype. To me, it was like, oh, okay, Garchomp, you got Mega Garchomp, you got the Z version, great, looks cool, but you know, like at least Lucario and Absol, they look so ridiculously different that it's a massive kind of moment where you're like, wow, they're big differences in the Mega Evolutions. To me, Garchomp, the Mega version, and Mega Garchomp Z all look pretty similar. So that was actually pretty funny there. But yeah, nonetheless, you do have that also coming out as well. And of course, Pokemon Pokopia, which is going to be like a Animal Crossing meets Pokemon. You are going to have, like, I've got a feeling that Pokemon Pokopia will have a very long shelf life. That is just a prediction I have in terms of when it starts. These kind of life simulator games, or just games where you're going to work pretty much, that's what like Animal Crossing and this looks like it's going to be. They have a massive audience and a lot of people are going to like that. So if you were thinking about starting content creation, you do have a little bit of a window opening there, especially if you start enjoying that game as well, because I just have a feeling that there's going to be a very long shelf life as well. But in all honesty, there seems to be a lot of movement happening with Pokemon, whether it's the Generation 10 hype, the 30th anniversary hype, or even the new starters. Though I think the 30th anniversary, I'm going to imagine that it's going to be quite difficult to get the product with all the hype. Though more importantly, I think it will shape the whole TCG space for 2026. And I do have some predictions about the 30th anniversary, which I do reveal in this video here. Within this video on screen, I go into what we can expect for Pokemon cards this year, and I give my honest predictions. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's appearing on screen. Really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next video.